house contained an upstairs room apiece, each facing in a different direction, and the entire floor making a cross, with a hall and a stairwell at the center. The front and side rooms were sealed and plastered and painted for use as bedrooms, but the unfinished rear chamber held only a clutter of trunks, boxes, and broken furniture. That part of the upper floor was hot and dusty in the summertime, and it was left open right up to the peak of its gable. Directly above its doorway to the central hall gaped an empty dark triangle that led to the slant-sided cave above the bedroom ceilings. Because it was so full of lumber, this unfinished room was called a garret, though it was not a real garret. The real garret was the dark space up under the roof. I was the youngest person in the house by more than a generation, and my youth seemed to offend everyone bitterly. I was constantly reminded of my childish stupidity and inexperience. Nobody felt that years would make me any wiser, and in time I grew to share that opinion. I tried never to make a statement or venture a suggestion that had not been voiced previously by one of my elders. Even at that, I came in for plenty of snaps and corrections, and repeated admonitions that little boys should be seen and not heard. So I learned to keep my own counsel. The downstairs parlor was full of books, and I read in them a great deal, including nearly all the volumes of an old Encyclopedia Britannica. This taste for reading attracted some curious attention on the part of my guardians. Occasionally one of them would say that I must be trained for the law or the ministry. I was never consulted as to my own ambition, which would have shocked the entire household. I wanted to be a deep-sea diver. That summer was a hot one, and my room in the gable on the right or northern side of the house had only one window. The sun's rays fell directly on the outside of the room's sloping walls, which were only the plastered and pitches of the gable, and which offered little insulation. Even by bedtime, my room did not cool down. I slept poorly, bothered by strange and vivid dreams. Sometimes I started awake in the darkness, sweating and tingling, and lay there as I listened to the rustle of the cottonwoods in the yard and the creaking of the old house timbers. After a while, I am not sure exactly when, I began to hear something else at night. Awareness of that sound grew upon me, first slowly and faintly, then with a terrifying clarity, over a number of hot, wakeful nights. It was something up above me, between the ceiling and the peak of the roof, something big and clumsy and stealthy. I remember telling myself that it was a rat up there, but the moment the thought came into my head, I knew it was a very silly thought indeed. Rats skip and scamper, they are light and swift and sure, itself hurt and humped itself across the ceiling above me. Always fear came with it, fear that did not diminish with time. I would stare into the hot gloom. My tongue would dry up between my teeth, and my fingertips would smart as though they had been rubbed sore. On my back would sprout and fan and winnow little involuntary wings of chill that made my spine shrink and quiver as though ice came and mingled with the marrow. The ceiling, I knew, would descend some night. It would descend upon me like a great millstone being lowered, and then it would crumble above my bed. Something huge and soft would wriggle free of the broken bits. There could be no talking about any of this, I knew very well. Long before I had learned that nobody in the house would listen or care. As I have said, I was scorned and disliked by all those others. Once, when a neighbor boy of 15 gave me a terrible beating in the front yard, everyone watched from the parlor windows, but none steered to help me. Not when I thought I would fall dead at my enemy's scornful feet. When he got tired of popping my face with his knuckles, he turned away at last, and I dragged myself in and was tongue-lashed on all sides for an hour. Today I cannot remember exactly what was urged against me, only that the tears I had not shed for pain welled forth under the scolding. Things like that made me hesitate about asking for help or anything else. One morning at breakfast, I did dare to inquire if the others had ever heard anything strange up under the roof, but I was only reprimanded for interrupting a discussion of local politics. That night, the noise was louder and more terrifying than ever. It began somewhere above another of the rooms, and then it trundled along my ceiling, slower and still slower, until it paused immediately above my bed. At that moment, it seemed to me that the lath and plaster were not tighter or stronger than a spider web, and that the bulk up there was incalculably more dire than the very prince and father of all spiders. I was certain that it crouched there, almost within reach of me, that it gloated and hungered, and that it turned over in its dark sub-personal awareness the problem of when and how to come and take hold of me. I could not have steered from my bed, could not even have cried out for help. The thing and the fear of it were with me always, night after night and week after week, until a day late in the summer, a dark and rainy day, when it did not wait for nightfall. I was alone in the house that day, and I had grown tired of hearing the rain and the dank swish of soaked leaves outside. I looked at the books in the parlor, but I had exhausted all that interested me. Then I remembered a stack of illustrated magazines, very old, in the corner of the lumber room. I climbed the stairs and opened the door. The lumber room was ugly and close, and a sort of brown light reflected from the unpainted joists and the insides of the shingles overhead. I found the magazines and began to paw through them. Up to then, there had been no sound except for the weary rain outside. But as I leafed through one of the magazines, there came a slow, muffled bump, bump, hump from above me, from that dark opening that led into the space above the ceiling. I knew that something sly and heavy was there, looking down upon me. In one scrambling moment, I had fled into the hall and downstairs and to the front door. I grabbed the knob, then I stopped and thought. It was no swelling of courage that made me pause before rushing out, only a hopeless but sensible consideration of what must follow. I could leave the house and go into the rainy street and mope there until someone came back. Then I would have to come back too, and in time night would fall and I would have to go to my room and go to bed in the dark. Then whatever made the noise would calm down. It would wait no longer, for it had seen me and my tortured terror. It would float to the floor and come in at my door and creep up on my bed. Then I would know how it looked and what color it was and what it wanted with me. All these things I pondered, and from somewhere came a cold determination that stiffened my limbs and my neck like new sawdust poured into an empty doll. I left the front door unopened and walked back through the house to the foot of the stairs. There I paused and tried to lift my foot to the bottom step, but I could not. After a while, and I think it was a very long while, I turned and walked to the back porch. There, upon the wood box, lay a hand axe. It was dull and rusty and wobbled upon its helve. But I took it in my hand and went back in, and this time, when I came to the steps, I mounted them. It was a slow journey, one step after another, with long tight breaths between. The old boards creaked under my shoes as if aghast at my rash ascent. I gained the upper hall and now did not hesitate, but went back into the lumber room. The brown light had darkened since I had first come there to find the magazines. I stood in the middle of the floor and made myself look up at that triangular opening, and that took a mustering of all my willpower, but there was nothing to see there. I stuck the handle of the axe down into the waistband of my knickerbockers and dragged a heavy, dust-laden old bureau across and pushed it toes against the wall beside the door. Upon that I placed a broken body chalk, and upon the chair a candle box set precariously on end. Finally I climbed up on the bureau, up on the chair, up on the box. My chin rose level with the threshold of the black cavern. It was like was not the slightest murmur of sound up under the roof. I slept so deeply that I had to be shaken and shouted awake in the mornings. And I never knew real fear again, not even in the war. That's it. The story is finished. I think it's a good one. It's not overly complicated or long, and its meaning is pretty obvious, but I like it. I wanted to wear glasses for this, but I couldn't find them, and ironically, as soon as I stopped recording, I immediately saw them, which is pretty funny and something that happens to me a lot. I think that's actually